Have you ever heard a story so powerful that it doesn't just tell you about the past, but quietly changes the way you see your own life? Today, you're about to experience one of those stories. It's the story of a man whose ideas have shaped the lives of more than 500 million people across the world, from India and Nepal to China, Japan, and Thailand. But this isn't just a story about history. It's a story about you, because the lessons you're about to hear are not limited to monks or ancient times. They are deeply human lessons about pain, happiness, purpose, and peace. And they still matter right now in your life. And there's something more. As you listen, you're also training your English, learning new words, improving your listening, and understanding deeper ideas in a natural way. So take a moment, relax, and let's begin this journey together. Long ago, in a peaceful region known as Lumbini, located in what we now call Nepal, a child was born into royalty. His name was Siddhartha Gautama. The world would later know him as the Buddha, meaning the awakened one. From the very beginning, his birth was surrounded by wonder. According to tradition, his mother, Queen Maya, gave birth in a beautiful garden. It is said that nature itself seemed to celebrate, flowers blossomed, and the atmosphere felt calm and sacred. People believed this was no ordinary child. Soon after his birth, a wise man made a remarkable prediction. This child would grow up to become a powerful king or a great spiritual teacher who would guide humanity toward peace. His father, King Suddhodana, didn't hesitate in choosing what he wanted. He dreamed of seeing his son become a strong ruler, and to make sure that happened, he made a very careful decision. He would protect Siddhartha from anything that might lead him toward a spiritual life. So the king built a world of comfort around him. Inside the palace, Siddhartha's life was filled with beauty and pleasure. He wore fine clothes, enjoyed delicious food, and was surrounded by music, gardens, and entertainment. Everything was designed to keep him happy and, more importantly, unaware. Unaware of pain, unaware of sickness, unaware of death. As Siddhartha grew older, he became admired for his charm, intelligence, and kindness. From the outside, his life looked perfect. He had everything most people could only dream of. And yet, something didn't feel complete. There was a quiet question inside him, a feeling that something important was missing, even if he couldn't explain what it was. One day, driven by curiosity, Siddhartha made a simple request. He asked to see what lay beyond the palace walls. At first, his father hesitated, but eventually he agreed, believing that seeing the outside world would only make his son more grateful for his luxurious life. But what Siddhartha discovered that day would change everything. As he traveled through the city, he saw something he had never seen before, an old man. The man's body was weak, his back bent, his face was covered with wrinkles. He moved slowly, as if each step required effort. "What is happening to him?" Siddhartha asked. His companion replied, "This is old age. It happens to everyone." Everyone? That idea stayed in Siddhartha's mind. He had never imagined that youth and strength could fade. As they continued, he saw something even more disturbing. A man lying on the ground, clearly in pain. His body looked weak, his breathing heavy. "What is wrong with him?" Siddhartha asked. "He is sick," came the answer. "Illness can affect anyone at any time." Now Siddhartha's heart felt uneasy. Two things he had never known, aging and sickness, were suddenly real. But the most difficult moment was still ahead. Soon they came across a group of people gathered around a lifeless body. Some were crying, others stood in silence.
"What is this?" Siddhartha asked, his voice quieter now. "This is death," his companion said gently. "Every living being must face it." In that moment, Siddhartha's understanding of life began to break apart. The perfect world he had known inside the palace, it was incomplete. It had hidden the truth. No matter how rich or powerful someone is, they cannot escape aging, sickness, or death. But just when everything seemed heavy and confusing, Siddhartha saw something unexpected. Under a tree sat a man dressed in simple robes. He had no wealth, no palace, no possessions, and yet his face was calm, peaceful, almost radiant. "Who is he?" Siddhartha asked. "He is a seeker," the companion replied, "someone searching for truth. He has let go of attachment and found peace." That image stayed with Siddhartha. For the first time, he saw a different possibility. Not a life of luxury, not a life of suffering, but a life of understanding. And in that quiet moment, a powerful decision began to form. Siddhartha realized that comfort could not protect him from truth, and that true peace could not be found in pleasure alone. If there was a way to understand suffering, if there was a way to find real peace, he had to discover it, even if it meant leaving everything behind.
That decision didn't come lightly. After witnessing the realities of life beyond the palace, Siddhartha found it impossible to return to his old way of living. The luxury, the music, the endless comfort, it all felt empty now. Not because it was wrong, but because it didn't answer the questions growing inside him. He had seen something deeper, something unavoidable. And once you see the truth, you can't unsee it. Still, there was one part of his life that made everything harder: his family. Siddhartha was married to a woman named Yasodhara, someone he loved deeply. Together, they had a young son, Rahula. His family wasn't just a responsibility, they were his heart. But even love couldn't silence the questions within him. He knew that people everywhere were suffering, not just physically, but emotionally, through fear, loss, and uncertainty, and he couldn't ignore it anymore. One night, as the palace slept in silence, Siddhartha made the most difficult decision of his life. He would leave. Not because he didn't love his family, but because he wanted to find something greater, something that could help not just himself, but everyone. He quietly stepped out of the palace, taking one last look at the life he was leaving behind. In that moment, he wasn't a prince anymore. He became a seeker. At the age of 29, Siddhartha began his journey into the unknown. With no wealth, no royal identity, and no clear destination, he traveled across forests and villages, searching for answers. Along the way, he met spiritual teachers and thinkers, people who had also left ordinary life behind in pursuit of truth. Many of them believed that the path to enlightenment required extreme discipline. They practiced severe self-denial, eating almost nothing, living in harsh conditions, and pushing their bodies to the edge of collapse. They believed that by rejecting physical comfort, they could purify the mind. Siddhartha committed himself fully to this path. For years he lived this way. He fasted for long periods. He meditated for hours without moving. His body grew weaker and thinner until he was barely able to stand. Every breath became a struggle. And yet, something was missing. Despite all the suffering he put himself through, he had not found peace. Instead, he found exhaustion. This realization changed everything. One day, after collapsing from weakness near a river, a woman named Sujata found him. She offered him a simple meal, milk and rice. At first, this might seem like a small moment, but it wasn't. As Siddhartha accepted the food and regained his strength, he understood something deeply important. Neither luxury nor extreme suffering leads to truth. Both are extremes, and both miss the point. What he needed was balance. This idea became the foundation of what he would later call the middle path, a way of living that avoids both overindulgence and self-destruction. It was a turning point. Now, with renewed clarity, Siddhartha made his way to a place called Bodhi Gaya. There, beneath a large tree, now known as the Bodhi tree, he prepared for the final stage of his search. He sat down, grounded himself, and made a powerful promise. He would not rise again until he discovered the truth. Days passed. He remained still, focused, and deeply aware of his own mind. But the journey inward was not easy. According to tradition, he faced intense distractions, both physical and mental. Fear, doubt, desire, all appeared like storms trying to pull him away from his goal. These challenges were often symbolized by a figure named Mara, the embodiment of temptation and illusion. But Siddhartha did not react. He didn't fight the distractions. He didn't run from them either. He simply observed them, calmly, patiently, and slowly they lost their power. Then, one night, something shifted. His understanding deepened beyond anything he had experienced before. He saw clearly the nature of life, how suffering arises, and how it can end. In that moment, Siddhartha became the Buddha, the awakened one. But what exactly did he discover? At the heart of his realization were four simple but powerful truths. First, life includes suffering. Pain, loss, and change are part of being human. Second, suffering has a cause. It often comes from craving, wanting things to stay the same, or wishing reality were different. Third, suffering can end. It is possible to free ourselves from this cycle. And fourth, there is a path that leads to that freedom. This path became known as the Eightfold Path, a practical guide for living with wisdom and balance. It includes understanding reality clearly, making thoughtful decisions, speaking honestly, acting with integrity, choosing a meaningful way to live, developing self-discipline, staying mindful, and training the mind through deep focus. These weren't abstract ideas, they were tools meant to be practiced in daily life. And the most powerful part? The Buddha believed that anyone could follow this path. Not just monks, not just scholars, anyone. After his awakening, the Buddha faced an important question. Should he keep this discovery to himself or share it with the world? He understood that what he had realized was deep, subtle, and not easy to explain. But he also knew that people everywhere were struggling, just as he once had. So he chose to teach. His first step was to find 5 former companions, men who had once practiced extreme self-denial with him. They had left him earlier believing he had given up on the spiritual path. When they saw him again, they were unsure what to think. This was not the same man. There was a calmness in him, a clarity, something they couldn't ignore. At first, they were skeptical, but as he began to speak, explaining the nature of suffering and the path beyond it, they started to listen. Not because he demanded it, but because his words carried truth. One by one, they understood.
These 5 men became his first disciples, and together they formed the beginning of a community, a group dedicated not just to learning, but to living these teachings. From that moment on, the Buddha spent the rest of his life walking from place to place, sharing what he had discovered.
He spoke to kings and farmers, to rich merchants and poor laborers, to men, women, young and old. He didn't separate people by status or background. To him, everyone had the same potential to understand, to grow, and to find peace. What made his teaching so powerful wasn't just the ideas themselves, it was the way he lived them. He was patient, even when challenged, calm, even in difficult situations, compassionate, even toward those who disagreed with him. He didn't ask people to believe blindly. He encouraged them to observe their own minds, to question, and to discover truth through experience. One of his most important teachings was mindfulness, the ability to be fully present. He explained that much of our suffering comes from being trapped in the past or worried about the future. But when we bring our attention to the present moment, something changes. We become aware, we become clear, we become free. He also taught that everything in life is temporary. Emotions come and go, situations change, even our bodies age and fade. Understanding this doesn't make life sad, it makes it real. And when we truly accept change, we suffer less. Over time, his teachings spread across regions and cultures. Communities formed, ideas grew, and his message reached far beyond the place where his journey began. But even as his influence expanded, the Buddha himself remained simple. He owned very little, he lived peacefully, and he continued teaching until the very end of his life. As he grew older, his body began to weaken, as all bodies do, but his mind remained steady. In his final days, he traveled to a quiet place called Kushinagar. There, surrounded by his followers, he prepared for his last moments, not with fear, but with complete acceptance. At one point, after eating a meal that made him seriously ill, his physical pain increased. Yet even then, he remained calm. He used that moment to remind his disciples of something essential. Pain is part of life, but suffering in the mind is something we can learn to transform. As his life came to a close, he offered his final words, simple but deeply powerful. He told his followers to rely on themselves, to be a light in their own lives, to continue seeking truth with effort and awareness. And most importantly, he reminded them, everything in life is temporary. Nothing stays the same. Understanding this is the key to freedom. Soon after, he passed away peacefully, entering what is known as final liberation. But in many ways, his journey didn't end there, because his teachings continued, and they still continued today. Not just in temples or books, but in everyday life, in moments of patience, in acts of kindness, in quiet awareness. So what can we take from his story? Maybe this: be present. Don't carry the past or fear the future. Focus on now. Let go. Holding too tightly only creates pain. And choose compassion, because how we treat others shapes the world we live in. The story of the Buddha is not just about one person. It's about the human journey, facing difficulty, searching for meaning, and discovering peace. And that journey is still open to you. Thank you for spending this time here. I hope this story gave you something valuable, not just for your English, but for your life. If you enjoyed this, stay with us. There's so much more to explore, learn, and understand together. Until next time, stay aware, stay kind, and keep growing.